Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, I'm Allie, and today is the Goodreads Choice Awards, at least the nominees, and it's time to start voting on your favorites. I have been anticipating this all day long. I have been like barely able to hold in my excitement and try not to spoil myself, because although I'm not gonna lie, I was spoiled by seeing an author share that theirs made the cut and also a friend share like their cast and vote or whatever. Besides that, I wasn't spoiled. But then I thought to myself, I want to go and I want to look at the categories, because Goodreads did a little bit of like a category shift last year. So I was like, I wonder if they changed anything. And then I quickly exited the app because I seen that the cover photos have like a collage of 4 of the books. So I was spoiled by those 4. So I had originally thought about guessing and trying to predict, but ultimately I ran out of time and here I am. And I feel like there is some off the top of my head that I feel like are going to make it. I feel like we had some new ones from Stephen Graham Jones, or new ones, I think, from Stephen Graham Jones, or was it just the one? And then we also had Josh Malerman this year, Stephen King, a lot of very popular authors that we typically see on the horror nominees or in the horror nominees. So I decided if I don't have time to do that, I still want to try to give you guys my best full reaction here to seeing it, like the full list for the first time, give you guys my feedback on it, and also talk a little bit about it, because as you guys can probably see from the title and thumbnail, I'm deep diving today into horror. I don't know if this is the only genre I'm going to do, but for today's vlog, I'm just diving into the horror. There is 20 books up to vote for in each genre. So for horror, I'm gonna go through the 20 that are listed, and I am hoping and crossing my fingers I have made a dent into this already. Otherwise, this might be a pretty long vlog, so get your snacks ready, because I am going to, by the end of this year, read all 20 of these and rank them for you guys after we see the results of who won and what I thought with my reading taste and how I would rank them versus how everyone else did. Guys, just from the 4 little picture collage of the horror cover photo, I've only read 1 of them. This is gonna go badly. So the first one we have is The Book of Witching by C.J. Cooke, which I've not read. Then we have A Sunny Place for Shady People by Mariana Enriquez. That cover is stunning, and I've really wanted to read this one, but that's 2 that I haven't read so far. I also have not read Indian Burial Ground by Medina, or The Bog Wife by Kay Cronister. I'm at least happy that all of these so far have been very familiar covers to me, and ones that have been on my radar that I've considered reading. I have read You Like It Darker by Stephen King. I've not read, is it Diavola? Or Diavola? I'm not for sure how that's pronounced, but by Jenna Marie Thorne. Murder Road by Simone St. James. Although I have not read this one, I do love a good Simone St. James. I have read quite a few of these next ones. What Feast at Night, which was the Sworn Soldier, book 2 from T. Kingfisher. Loved it. And funny enough, I read it for a vlog that I was working on that I ended up throwing out completely. So I might circle back to that book for this video and give you guys my thoughts on that one. Next up was I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones, which I knew was gonna be on here. The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monica Kim, which I just read and loved. Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle, which I also loved. Then we have Blood Like Mine from Stuart Neville, and I don't think I've seen this cover or this book at all. The Angel of Indian Lake, which I am still working on this trilogy from Stephen Graham Jones. The second one is going to be mentioned in a video that is already up. I did a whole video about slashers, and the second book and that is mentioned. I reread the first one, My Heart is a Chainsaw, earlier this year. And now it's time to get to the third one, which is also in my 24 and 24 list that I really need to get to before the end of the year. Next is We Used to Live Here by Marcus Clearwer? I don't know how you say his last name, but I loved that book. Then we have This Cursed House by Del Sandeen. And I actually just got this from my Aardvark book club box. So that's exciting. House of Bone and Rain. I have seen this cover. It is so gorgeous. I love how vibrant it is. My Darling Dreadful Thing by Johanna Van Veen. That's so awesome that their book made it on the list. I had so thoughts with that one, but there was so many elements of it that I loved, but I'm super excited that their book made it. So Thirsty by Rachel Harrison I just read, and I also just read Incidents Around the House by Josh Malerman a couple months ago. And then the last one is Sleep Tight by J.H. Markert, which a friend just recently gifted me. I'm actually really excited for this TBR. I now need to count up how many I have left to read and how many I have read. But I feel like while I'm not very surprised or shocked by some of these names that I'm seeing on this list, there's others that I am actually really shocked to see. And I'm trying to think off the top of my head if there's some that I'm shocked or not on here. I feel like there's been so many good horror books this year that I need to go back through my Goodreads for this year and see which ones for 2024. So that I will have on my to-do list for my next part of this video. But for now, I've read 9 out of 20, so that means I have 11 books left to get to for this list, which, you know what, it could have been a lot longer than that. So I feel like this is more doable. So I'm going to come up with my list of maybe books that I felt like should have made this list to come back and talk to you guys about, but also I'm going to go ahead and pick up one of my books to read for this so I can get this video going and I can get through all of these books, hopefully in time to where I can still cast in a vote. Off the top of my head right now, it's already extremely hard because there's 5 stars here that I would have to go through. I think it would come down to The Eyes Are the Best Part, Bury Your Gaze, We Used to Live Here, even Incidents Around the House. All of those are very top contenders. This is going to be so hard to like figure out which one is my absolute favorite. Sorry about that text you got, I didn't ever mean to send it, so you got me. Incidents Around the House. This is a 2024 release by Josh Malerman. He is the author of Bird Box and what is it, The House Under the Lake, I think is one. I personally really liked Daphne by him. There is some creepy and some terrifying moments in this book. Book is from the point of view of a little girl who is being haunted and potentially possessed. As Grady Hendrix says, this book is the monster that lives inside your closet. And that's exactly what it is. This follows Bella, who's 8 years old. Her family is her world. There's Mommy, Dado, Grandma Ruth, but there's also other Mommy, a malevolent entity who asks her every day, "Can I go inside your heart?" When horrifying incidents around the house signal that other Mommy is growing tired of asking Bella the question over and over, Bella understands that unless she says yes, her family will soon pay. Other Mommy is getting restless, stronger, bolder. Only the bonds of family can keep Bella safe, but cracks in her parents' marriage are starting to show. The safety Bella relies on is about to unravel, but other Mommy needs an answer. This is such a unique book for me. I feel like I haven't really read anything like this as far as getting a child point of view the whole way through. Honestly, I thought this was going to be a 3-star book, if not a 4-star book, because I was just like, I don't think I'm going to enjoy this point of view. But I actually rather enjoyed myself, and I even listened to the audiobook. It was kind of a tandem. The audiobook, now, future Allie versus Allie from the 24-hour horror-a-thon. I know that I believe the audiobook anyways, hopefully I'm not just pulling this out of my ass, but I'm pretty sure the audiobook is read and narrated by a little girl, which makes a lot more sense. I honestly thought while reading it though, it sounded like an older woman who was making her voice like a little girl, which could still be the case. But I think I've seen somewhere that it is narrated by a little girl. So it makes me feel a little bit better about it, but I will say it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. I feel like it's going to be a little annoying for some people to listen to a whole book with a higher pitched little voice. But I did find it pretty creepy and scary in some scenes to have that voice reading it to me. But I did tandem read it. But I think what I had a hard time with reading this one too, this and another book I'm currently reading, it has no quotation marks all the way through it. So sometimes there's a conversation that, you know, is kind of going back and forth between characters, but instead of like pausing and saying like Daddo said or Mommy said or whatever, it's just literally their dialogue. So it was a little bit easier to listen to the audio because even if it is a little girl, she does change her voice for the characters, so you could kind of follow along the dialogue a little better. In some instances, some weren't bad, but yeah, really creepy, really eerie. I highly recommend this because with all of those things in mind, with the direction it was going, I like possession stories, but I felt like since this was a little girl's point of view, it wasn't going to get as horrifying as I wanted it to, but it does. I don't know, I just got this weird vibe from it when I first started reading it that I was like, that's gonna be 3-4 stars at most. But they really kicked it up a notch, and although there is some really uncomfortable scenes in this, some uncomfortable conversations in this, I kind of liked how it brought it all together, almost like your real life horror into a horror story on top of that. So you have kind of all those elements. It's kind of like ripping off the band-aid of the horror that you're trying to keep hidden and secret. And there was definitely questionable moments for me where I was just like, oh, I don't know if I like this or not. But the more it went on and tied together the way it did, I actually, at the end, was like, I think this is a 5-star, and I was so questioning myself in the 24-hour horror-a-thon, but I can confidently say now that I did give this a 5-star. If you follow me on Goodreads, you would have seen that. I really enjoyed it. And so Incidents Around the House, I read back in, was it September or October, I think? But it was for the 24-hour horror-a-thon. So just within the past couple 24-hour horror-a-thons, I actually read that. And I then included it also in my recent, the one where I read like Friends. And spoiler alert, if you haven't seen that vlog yet, I will link it. But I had so much fun with this vlog, reading as each of the characters. And this was my Joey pick because I feel like Joey likes a little bit of horror, even if he has to stick the book in the freezer a few times. So that is the choppiness of my review for Incidents Around the House and why my rating popped up with like the Friends picture frames. This is also my fair warning that some of these reviews will be a little repetitive. Not too much in this part because I am reading a lot of these for the first time in this first part, but there is some reviews here and there that I am taking from past videos, past months where I have read them just to combine all of the 20 Best of Horror 2024 from Goodreads. Which segues us right into my next one, which is Sleep Tight. This is by J.H. Markert.
My feelings are so fuck autocorrect, and I've been doing fine except the stabbing pain up in my chest, and I'm stuttering. Okay, I'm done, but now you're gone again. I'll take all.
I'm not really sure how you pronounce his last name, but I was gifted this from a friend who subscribes to Book of the Month and then passes them along to friends, so shout out and thank you to them. I didn't really know what to expect with this one. They told me that it was horror that they enjoyed. This particular friend has told me that they don't really read like a lot of horror because they struggle liking any new horror because it kind of feels like everything's been done and they're more of like a thriller mystery and historical fiction type of readers. So they said that they were pleasantly surprised with this one. So I was excited to jump into it. I do think it reads a little bit like a thriller in a way, but definitely has horror aspects to it. The sole survival of a serial killer might hold the key to stopping a new spree of murders. Beware the one who got away. Father Silence once terrorized the rural town of Twisted Tree, disguising himself as a priest to prey on the most vulnerable members of society. When the police finally found his house of horrors, they uncovered 19 bodies and one survivor, a boy now locked away in a hospital for the criminally insane. Nearly 2 decades later, Father Silence is finally put to death. But by the next morning, the detective who made the original arrest is found dead. A new serial killer is taking credit for the murder and calling himself the Outcast. The detective's daughter, Tess Claiborne, is a detective herself. Haunted by childhood trauma and horrified by the death of her father and the resurgence of Father Silence's legacy. When Tess's daughter is kidnapped by the Outcast, Tess is forced to face her worst fears and long-buried memories. With no leads to follow, she travels back to Twisted Tree to visit the boy who survived and see what secrets might be buried in the tangled web of his broken mind. Oh my goodness, that was a mouthful. This book really wasn't what I was expecting, especially like with the whole like sleep tight. It definitely plays into it, but this one I feel like does kind of keep you a little confused throughout. We have different like storylines going on. So we have before, and this is kind of breaking down the story of what originally happened when Tess's dad was the detective and what happened then. We then have like a little thing from a column about missing teens found in Twisted Tree. Month-long hunt ends in tragedy. And so it's kind of like a news column. And then we start off our story, and this is where we're following Tess, and she's seeing that there is this new person called the Outcast who is starting to terrorize them and go on a killing spree and then ultimately kidnapping her own daughter. It kind of stays like that throughout. We have chapter and then we have before. So we're kind of getting clues from before that might draw us to who the culprit is. And it definitely does feel like a whodunit because you are trying to figure out who this Outcast is, the mystery of it all. And we also have a little bit of like mixed media here when it comes to like, I can find one. Interviews going back and forth, this one between a person and a detective who is asking them questions and trying to get answers about these people that they're starting to suspect or trying to, I guess, like tick off each box of who could be this suspect. At the same time, it's a wild ride where Tess has to work with her, I guess you could call them estranged, husband who has recently ran off and had an affair, I believe. I could be wrong. His name is Justin. I feel like I'm reading so many of these, like back to back to back, that some of these characters are starting to like jumble up with me a little bit. But I also want to point that out because I feel like in this book, there's definitely moments where she's super snarky with him and like, you don't get to say that to me, you don't get to do that, you did this, you ran out on us, and that type of ordeal. But I feel like to an extent, and then it's like the rest of the book, it's almost just like it's out the window. And I understand the stress and the pressure they feel that their daughter is missing and they're having to work together, her being a detective and him being a psychiatrist. But I feel like this main character, Tess, just kind of really just lets it go out the window. And that was a little weird for me. It made me kind of forget that plot point and be like, did that happen in this book or was it a different book? Because not really continuing on with that and making me now question myself, was it this book? But I'm pretty sure it was. They're having to work together. It's a little awkward and the tensions are high, the stress is high, so of course they're going to kind of be like snarky with each other and bickering back and forth, maybe placing the blame on each other while they're trying to figure out who has their daughter. And he keeps making phone calls, this Outcast, trying to drop like clues and telling her. And the weird thing about it is this is a concept that I don't think everybody loves, but it's like this memory loss that you regain. And while it's not my all-time favorite, I do have to say I didn't mind it with this one as much just because I am somebody who has experienced a lot of dissociation in my life to where there is chunks of my life that I don't even remember. So I feel like the trauma that Tess went through with her childhood and the case her father was on has led her to dissociate a lot, which means now her memories are being triggered with all of this happening with her daughter, to where she is getting these like vivid memories here and there about what had happened, and they end up being clues that are leading her to her daughter. I hope I've explained it enough. I definitely feel like it reads more thriller-like, because it does feel like a book that you don't really want to give too much away, because then it's like, what's the point? You definitely want to go into it a little bit more blindly than knowing too much of it, but it is a fun ride. There's a lot to it, and I like the different stories. I feel like it adds a lot to it. It definitely can be a little confusing at times, but I feel like if you just follow along very well, you'll have a fun time with it, and it'll keep you entertained because you're not just stuck on the same storyline. I felt like it might have fallen a little bit more boring if it would have just stuck with Tess and Justin the whole time. I really liked that we had like the flashback moments and the interviews and the news article things and all of that kind of stuff to help us almost feel like we're a part of it and solving it with them. It made it a lot more entertaining and fun. I definitely see myself picking up some more books from JH in the future. And I also liked in the acknowledgments that he mentioned that one of his biggest fears growing up was being kidnapped. And so that kind of developed over time into how can I make that horror of mine as a child into a story now. And you guys know I'm a sucker for knowing any of the details behind the writing process and why they chose to go a direction they did and all of that. So I thought that that was really cool too. But ultimately, I am landing at a 4. It is not a solid 5 for me. I do feel like it is a solid 4. I probably wouldn't say it's a super high 4 or a low 4. I just think it's pretty solid. But just like I mentioned before, kind of feeling like a thriller, it's almost a type of thriller where you probably will never reread it again. I mean, I could see myself maybe rereading it down the line just because I'm reading it so close to so many other books that maybe I'll want to like a refresh with it. But yeah, solid 4.
Again, I'll take all your issues, you can have my friends. I don't miss seeing or miss you on my phone screen. Now I save the tissues that you bought me from a nosebleed. I don't think about you, but it's all sweet.
Thirsty by Rachel Harrison. It's not what I was expecting. I kind of feel a little let down, but then I felt like I simmered on it a little bit last night, and I was like, you know what? This rings true from what I remember reading writing style from her with Such Sharp Teeth, which is her werewolf book. I love a good vampire story, but like I tend to go for more of like the older classics or the newer books that read like classics that are kind of like gothic and just everything I want from a vampire story. Where with this one, it's super contemporary, so you're gonna have to go into that knowing that like it did have like certain elements that reminded me of that movie, what is it, The Invitation, which I've talked about a lot. A lot of people hate that movie. I like it. I like the like aesthetics of it. It reminded me a little bit of that in a sense of these two friends. This is more of a friendship book over romance, although there is a little bit of romance. A smidge of spice, not too much, but we follow our main character and I already forgot her name. How could I forget Sloane? Because she literally mentions it over and over, especially in the beginning. So Sloane and Naomi are friends, and the book starts with Sloane getting a surprise from her husband. We're kind of realizing that their marriage is not amazing. It's kind of like she's just living her life, and she almost acts like her life is like, this is the bed I made and now I have to just lay in it. I'm not gonna change anything. I'm unhappy, but like, who cares? Like, this is the life I made. She's set in her ways and she doesn't like change, so that's really hard for her to navigate. Where Naomi, her best friend, is not that way. Naomi is wild, only likes to have a good time. I don't really care for their dynamic. I just didn't really care for it. I feel like as the book went on, I started liking them more and more. But I think because I was looking at it as like a haha silly aspect of it. But yeah, I don't think that this book really needed to have this like friendship core to it. I almost think I would have preferred more... A crow? Hello? I will give you treats. Sorry guys, we're just gonna let him interrupt our video because I can't even tell if it's a crow or not, or if it's a different bird. If it's a crow, I'm letting it pop in and ruin my video. Guys, I just found their relationship very tedious and very just unwanted, and especially in the beginning. But her husband surprises her with this like getaway for 2, but it's like for her and her best friend and not him. And we're starting to already gather that he's kind of like a douchebag. But anyways, her and Naomi, they go on this weekend getaway, and Naomi drags her out to like, because like after she confessed to Naomi that like her marriage isn't going great and it's not what she envisioned for her life, but like this is what it is type of ordeal, Naomi's like, no, you cannot settle for less. Like you need to settle for what you deserve or get what you deserve. And so Naomi takes her like out to like this party, which ends up being like this wild event. I read some stuff that I could have done without, but as we know, those spicy moments definitely are in a lot of vampire books with groups, if you know what I mean. That was probably the spiciest part of the entire book, was just like Sloane being very awkward and not really knowing what to do with herself at an event where there's a lot of people doing some things. With that being said, the spice between like the romance characters wasn't like over the top. It was mild. But this is kind of like the invitation for me, because it's like they're at this party where they're starting to realize something weird is going on, and are these people vampires? And from there on out, it's a pretty bloodthirsty event. I really love Rachel Harrison's writing when it comes to the gory bits and the gory details. I feel like she's a very imaginative with those parts. I also actually really liked the romance, and that's why I kind of wish that she went in that direction over the friendship direction with this one, because I just felt like we needed more of that in this. Like, she was so good at like the romance with it, and it was almost like an insta-love, which I normally am not like the hugest fan of. I like to warm up to it a little bit more, but I actually really liked it with this one. Now somebody's mowing. Are you kidding me? Anyways, I kind of liked it with this one, but I felt like it was still a little off-putting, where if she would have really focused on the romance more than this friendship, I feel like this could have possibly be a 5-star for me. I think it's just the contemporary elements I wasn't a huge fan of. Oh my god. The friendship. I just didn't really get on board with their friendship as much as I would have liked. I think after that, it was just like a wild ride, and I was like, what am I reading at times? But other times, it was almost like a horror comedy, so I kind of liked it. Yeah, I would like to see more romance from her and more horror bits. She's so good at writing both of those, but I feel like I can't land at a solid 5 with this, probably a 3 even. I feel like this could be maybe a 4. I feel like if it's a 4, it's like barely a 4, because of the bits that I just didn't really care for, or that I just kind of felt like were unnecessary, or just, I wish she didn't write like as contemporary. Like, it almost feels like I'm reading a contemporary romance, and I don't want that. But it's like, but with this, it's like friendship, and then there's vampires, and then there's, you know, gore, a little bit of gory bits and stuff. But like the first half of this book is just kind of like reading a cheesy contemporary romance that I just don't really tend to love. I loved where this went though, and I felt like that was really interesting, and she had a bunch of like not a bunch, but a few of these like gory moments that really pulled the book together for me for it being a vampire read. And again, I love the romance. I just wish it wasn't as insta-love, because she could have focused in on those characters a little bit more than just Sloane and Naomi. Anyways, that's my TED Talk.
Take all your issues, you can have my friends. I don't miss you with my phone screen. Now I save it to
Next one up is Indian Burial Ground. This one is by Nick Medina, and this is my first time reading anything from him. There is another one, yeah, Sisters of the Lost Nation, that I believe Kayla's Literally Dead book club, I think it was one of the picks for it, and I still have not gotten around to that one. It is probably buried away in my TBR jar that I will get to eventually. But I have to say, I, over the past year or two, have been dabbling into like Mexican folklore horror and stuff like that and having an amazing time with it. And it has then branched off into, I feel like, reading some different folklore of different countries and races, and stumbling into Stephen Graham Jones' work with more of like an Indian folklore, with My Heart is a Chainsaw and some of his other work, and now into Indian Burial Ground with Nick Medina. I wish I had better things to say about this. I don't think it overall was like a horrible book or anything. I think it's a good book. I think it can be very enjoyable. I think for me, I just felt a little taken out of it with the writing. I felt like the writing pulled a little bit more slow, and for me, somewhat boring at times, that I had a hard time like really, I guess, sinking into the story and like living in that moment with it like I do with loved books. I think a big aspect of this is the fact that since I'm doing this video, I'm tandem reading some of these, and I'm reading holiday horror things and other exciting things for other vlogs, that I'm kind of intertwining all of them and tandem reading. And so this one just wasn't as exciting as the ones that I was currently picking up, and I think that took me out a little bit, or maybe not want to pick this one up. And every time I did, I was just like, you know, you've got to read this. This is the next one for the Goodreads horror. And I think because of this one, it put me in a little bit of a slump, because I felt like every time I had to read, I needed to pick this one up instead of the ones I was wanting to pick up, and that always puts me in a reading slump. But besides that, I do feel like since this is taking me longer, it is what is ultimately delaying this video, and I'm had to push it back further twice. So now it's going to be like the end of December before these videos are up. With that being said, I'm not ranking these right now. I don't want to like roast this too hard, because I do think it's overall a really interesting story, and there is like that folklore, you know, all throughout. We follow Noemi, who is wanting a fresh start. She has a boyfriend, it says, who actually treats her right, and a plan to move from the reservation she grew up on, just like her beloved Uncle Louis before her. Things are finally looking up for her until the news of her boyfriend's apparent unaliving brings her world crumbling down. But the facts about Roddy's death just don't add up, and Noemi isn't the only one who suspects that something menacing might be lurking within their tribal lands. After over a decade away, Uncle Louis has returned to the reservation, bringing with him a past full of secrets, horror, and what might be the key to determining Roddy's true cause of death. Together, Noemi and Louis set out to find answers, and as they get closer to the truth, Noemi begins to wonder whether it might be best for some secrets to remain buried. Very tribal, I feel like, to an extent, but at the same time, I really think this comes down to those folktale stories that are kind of like, you know, these like little urban myths or legends that maybe you're told as like childhood stories or campfire stories that are then turned into something like this. And I think that aspect is so cool. I love books like that. I think if the writing wasn't as slow for me, or so much more as a slow burn, really getting into it, I would have enjoyed it more, because when we got to like the thick of it, it was interesting and it was going somewhere, and I really enjoyed it. I just didn't relate very well with Noemi in any way. The thing is, I understand from her past and from her culture and family and stuff like that, we may not relate there, but I was hoping to relate with her in any type of aspect of, you know, being a woman, being in love, being, you know, just day-to-day things. But being in her head, I just didn't enjoy myself. I definitely enjoyed the point of view from Uncle Louis a lot more, and kind of having that flashback of what went on and what's causing this like curse, if you will, in their small town or reservation. And how it went from that many years ago and now is happening again, and trying to solve the mystery of it all. But there was just something else that I feel like was a little off-putting for me when it came to this story and putting all of these pieces together, feeling confused at times and not understanding if I'm getting the full concept. Maybe it was just me, but at the same time, what I did get from it, I really enjoyed. I thought it was a really cool way to wrap everything up. I thought it was a really cool way to incorporate so much into the story to make it all make sense in the end, but I just still felt like there was some things not completely fleshed out for me, unfortunately. And I don't know, this one I feel like I need time to simmer, but I don't have time because of this video, that I'm having a hard time with my words tonight. Maybe I will be better later on talking about it, but I think I'm landing at a 3 with this one. But I would pick up more from Nick. I would try his work more just to get a feel for it. It may just be the writing that's not for me. Who knows? But I do think it was a very creative story and would be interested in future work of his.
You can have my friends. I don't miss seeing them, miss you on my phone screen. Now I save the tissues that you bought me from a nosebleed. I don't think
The
about
Book
you,
of
but
Witching
it's
was such a tough one for me to get through. This one has such a cool concept, being kind of, think like witch trials. This is that vibe. We have 2 points of views though, so we go back in time to Finn Hollow, Isles of Gun, Orkney. Is that how you pronounce that? But in January of 1594, to then Finn Hollow, May 2024. So we follow 2 different women. It actually says 400 years separate them. 1 book binds them, and that is the Book of Witching. Cool thing about this though is that we have a little historical note at the beginning that says in 1594 a woman was accused of assisting a man in his plot to kill his brother. The man was acquitted. The woman was executed at Gallow in Kirkwall, Orkney. Her name was Alison Balfour. She was the first of over 70 women to be executed in Orkney on charges of witchcraft. Of course her name is Alison. Devastating. The witch trials are always like such a devastating yet interesting story, I feel like, to dive into and to learn the history of. So many people were executed for even witchcraft in general, and just thinking about how freely we get to do witchcraft these days, and where somebody can do is call you out, or they don't like that you do that, you know? So the story of Alison in this is fictional, but taken from a real historic story of a woman. And I felt like this author, C.J. Cooke, my first book by her, and I've never read anything from her. I definitely would be interested to read more in the future. I think she has some more witchy books, and her writing style reminded me a lot of Alice Hoffman, so you guys know I love that. But I was just so heartbroken for this Alison. We learn so much about her. We grow so fond of her and so close to her and her family and her just life dynamic, that when it all comes shattering down, it's so heartbreaking, so gut-wrenching. I was so angry for her. I was tearing up in moments, and it's very gut-wrenching. That part of the story for me, Alison's story, and the way that she took this nonfiction historical story and turned it into a beautiful fiction story, was so beautiful. 5 stars. But what took me out of this was her concept of jumping into the future with another girl who she has found at Finn Hollow on a beach, pretty much charred, like she's almost burnt alive. She goes to the like burnt unit at the hospital where she has to stay in like a sedative like coma for a while because her injuries are so severe, and her parents, who are estranged and separated, and her dad's kind of started a new life with his new family, but they're having to like work together to figure out and find the clues to lead them back to why their daughter wanted to go to Finn Hollow in the first place. I think she's like 19, so she's still pretty young, but you know, legally an adult, so it's not like her mom could stop her from going, but she does have a small child as well, so it's like they're trying to piece this all together and figure out what all happened, because the other two teenagers that went with her, one of them nobody has seen, and the other one's body was found, so he is dead. And it was like her boyfriend, so they're just trying to figure out, like, was there foul play? Did she cause it? They don't know because she's in this coma, so they're trying to put all the pieces together, but everything is circling back to this curse-like witchcraft type book, the Book of Witching. And it's kind of intertwined to stories, and we jump back and forth between the two. Again, I loved the story with Allison and her family, and it feeling like a very fictionalized retelling of a victim of the witch trials that took place years and years and years ago, where the new current day, I can't remember their names. I remember the mom and dad was like Clem and Quinn, and it drove me insane because I was just like, there's nothing wrong with those names, but they're so close together. Like, her name is Clementine and his name is Quinn, but like she goes by Clem and he is Quinn, and it's just, they're so close sounding that I hated reading their names so close together, especially it's like Clem and Quinn, and I'm like, you should have made those names a little bit different. They just sound so close. Erin is the daughter, I believe, in the hospital. But anyways, trying to get Erin's story and stuff, it just really took me out of it. It's so modern, so pop culture. I mean, they're talking about like their cell phones, and they're talking about like TikTok and Snapchat, and I mean, just really weird concepts, I feel like, to twist and throw into a book where you're also talking about the witch trials, and many years ago when like you're talking about somebody being brutally killed to get somebody else to confess to something they didn't do. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump forward to 2024 and talk about trying to access something on Snapchat, or to look at this girl's TikTok and, oh my god, that TikTok's like the worst thing that she could have possibly done, or journaling, this was like the worst thing she could have possibly done. And it's just, it really takes you out of it, and it's so frustrating to me because this could have been a 5-star, but I am landing at a 4-star because of those aspects that just didn't really do it for me. And although I had this like, what's the word? Like I really felt for Clem, the like mother of the girl who was in this like tragic burning accident. I really felt for her, and you know, her trying to figure out what was going on, and nobody like really taking her word for it all the time, or making her seem like she didn't know what she was talking about. And you know, I really felt for her in so many ways of just wanting to figure out what happened with her daughter. But besides that, none of the other characters in that time frame really worked for me. I didn't really care for any of them. So yeah, I feel like it's a good book. I think a lot of people would enjoy it, but it is very sad. And I don't see it being a perfect 5-star for a lot of people, just because of the jarring jump between the two different sides of the story. Guys, I have in fact read another book, but before I jump into that, I wanted to talk about what I mentioned at the beginning of this video and then just forgot. The books that I am shocked didn't make the list. Now I'm gonna be real. In the beginning of this video, there was some books that came to mind and I was shocked about, and then I realized that they were 2023 books. And then I went back through all of the books I've read this year and was trying to think about which ones are more newer, of course, but then I was like, oh yeah, that's 2024. No, it would be 2023, like almost every single time. So I was like, okay, maybe it is adding up a little bit more. I don't think I have as many contenders as I thought I had, just because a lot of them were 2023. But I do have some, and I also have a list pulled up of a bunch of horror books that came out this year on Goodreads that I wanted to just go through and see if any of them stick out to me, whether I've read them or not. Maybe the author in general, I'll be like shocked, like, oh wow, I'm surprised their book didn't make the list. One in particular that I can think of off the top of my head, for instance, is American Rapture by C.J. Leede. I personally have not gotten to this one yet. It will probably be the new year before I do. But I'm mentioning it because I'm pretty sure Mayfly made it to the last year, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that as well, but that was one that stuck out to me that I'm like, why is Mayfly not on this list? And then I looked and it was 2023. But if it was published around the same time as American Rapture, I think that might have something to do with it, because I think American Rapture just published in November or early December, so that could probably be a factor why it didn't make the cut as well. Just kind of published too late. So I'm gonna go through these, and some of them I say they may be because they're published too late, like American Rapture, and I just don't have the time to click and see the date for each of these. So we're just going to move on if that is the case. But first of all, I'm appalled that Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay is not on there, because that was a 5-star for me, and I feel like Horror Movie deserves to be on this list. That was such a good book, you guys, and I know that not everybody like loved it, but I feel like it's such a strong book from Paul Tremblay that I'm shocked it wasn't at least a nominee. One book that I seen everywhere was Such Lovely Skin by Tatiana. I don't want to butcher that name, but Such Lovely Skin. Now that I'm thinking about it, that might be a YA, so that might be why, but I have seen that cover so much this year. I am going to be passing books like The Angel of Indian Lake that are already on the list. Ghost Station, I feel like S.A. Barnes, I feel like their book has been on there before, but maybe it's just because it was probably put in the sci-fi. I've also seen Craft Stories I Wrote for the Devil around a lot, so I'm kind of surprised that one didn't make the cut either. A lot of these next ones made the cut. I also seen The House That Horror Built around a lot, but I didn't hear amazing things about it. There is some authors like Nick Cutter that I don't typically see his books on the cut, and I believe his are more like intense horror, so maybe that's why too. But then you see authors like Johanna van Veen on there, and that's awesome, because I believe My Darling Dreadful Thing was their debut, and more of like a smaller author at this point, and making the cut I think is really cool. I believe Gretchen, what is it called? I can't think off the top of my head what that book is called. But I believe one of theirs has made a past one as well. Cooke has been on my list. I just haven't gotten to it yet. Also shocked that Christopher Golden, The House of Last Resort, didn't make it. I haven't seen the best ratings for Your Shadow Half Remains, but I feel like a lot of people have read that. I've definitely seen The Woods All Black. A lot of these other ones could be because they're YA as well, but some of them I've never heard of before. Josh Winning, Heads Will Roll, has been on my TBR for so long. I cannot wait to get to that one. But I'm kind of shocked that that one didn't make it either. I've heard everybody loving The Haunting of Velkwood by Gwendolyn Kiste? I don't know how to say that. I've seen that one everywhere too, so I'm kind of surprised it's not on here. The Mask of Flies, Devils Kill Devils. Johnny Compton's didn't make it. I didn't hear great things about V. Castro's newest, unfortunately. I still haven't gotten to it yet, but yeah, I didn't hear great things about that one. Liz Curran's, or Curran, however you say that. I don't know if Night Edge and First Light are YA or not, or if the second one was as good. It has a 4.13 rating on Goodreads, but I don't know. Ooh, I'm really intrigued by Mother Knows Best, Tales of Homemade Horror. I've never seen that before. Rest Stop by Nat Cassidy. I don't know how Goodreads does their nominees, if novellas are even allowed. I don't know if I can think of one off the top of my head that has been, so that could be it as well. And I was thinking about it, and I'm like, yeah, I read Nat Cassidy's new one, Nestlings, but that was 2023 too. I just didn't get to it until 2024. I did see Midnight on Beacon Street a lot as well, but again, the rating hasn't been the absolute best on that one. Ooh, kind of surprised that How to Make a Horror Movie and Survive didn't make it by Craig DeLuey. That one wasn't an all-time favorite for me. I think I landed at like 3 stars, and it was kind of like a low 3 for me. But I think a lot of other people would really like that. I just don't think it was my personal taste. I've heard good things about Thirst. The Skin Was Once Mine and Other Disturbances. I've heard that's not his best from Eric LaRocca, but I've heard people still have liked it. I've heard amazing things about We Came to Welcome You, but I want to say that one I think made, was it the debut? And then like the thriller category as well. That's the thing too, I don't know where the line is drawn with some of these, because I feel like I've read a couple that are already leaning more towards thriller than horror for me in this category, but definitely have heavy horror in them to where I can understand why they were put in the horror category. But I don't know if some of these other ones were mild enough to just be thriller, you know? I've also seen All the Fiends of Hell by Adam Neville around quite a bit. Mean Spirited. I did not like my last Nick Roberts, but I know that there is a lot of people who do enjoy his work, and I just know also, I'm pretty sure he publishes indie, if I'm not mistaken. So I feel like that might be why it's not picked up on Goodreads as well. And yeah, some of these other ones I've also seen as well, but I think it's kind of the same ordeal. Oh, and another one, Kill Your Darling. I am going to click on this one because I can't remember if this was a novella. Yeah, another novella. So again, I don't know how that works with the Goodreads Choice Awards, but Clay McLeod Chapman, I know, I'm pretty sure I've seen his name in the Goodreads Choice Awards before. Some of those names I have definitely seen in past ones, and I know for a fact they have full-length novels coming out next year, so I'm pretty sure more of them are going to be popping up in next year's horror category. If anything, going through this list has just added a lot more books to my TBR from 2024.
Stay awake, it's what they all say.
What you trying to get at?
The book I have completed is Blood Like Mine. This is by Stuart Neville. Once again, another author I've never read from before. This is a first, and I rather enjoyed my time. I was actually just talking to a friend about this one, and I said it reads kind of story-wise, plot-wise, vibe-wise. It reads like Sleep Tight, which I read at the beginning of this video. It's kind of those same vibes with this being a crime fiction type book. We have multiple points of views, maybe just 2 if I'm thinking correctly on this, but we follow this mother and daughter. It actually says, on a snowy December night, single mother Rebecca Carter drives her van into a snowbank to avoid hitting an elk on a desolate mountain highway. She is at the end of her rope, out of money and food. Still, she refuses help from a man in a pickup truck. Rebecca's adolescent daughter, Moonflower, whose name is Monica, but her nickname is Moonflower, so I may say both as I review this. But Rebecca and her daughter are on the run from a grisly secret, and the last thing they can afford is to be remembered by anyone they meet. Meanwhile, we flip point of view to Special Agent Mark Donner of the FBI, who has spent the better part of 2 years hunting down a gruesome serial killer who drains victims of blood before severing their spinal cords, leaving a trail of bodies throughout the country. I'm gonna get flagged. As Agent Donner's investigation brings him closer and closer to where Rebecca and Moonflower are hiding out in the foothills of Colorado, the life that Rebecca has fought so hard to hold together for her daughter becomes increasingly imperiled. In this deadly high-stakes game of cat and mouse, nobody is safe. Nothing is certain, not even the line between predator and prey. I feel like that is a really good synopsis to just leave you there and be like, the rest of it, let it come to you blindly. But I will say, there is more to it that comes into play with the name and with this whole serial killer in general draining blood, and just these 2 points of views, I feel like make it a very fast pace, quick read, cat and mouse. And it's so hard because you really grow attached to this bond that this mother and daughter have, and it's so sweet, and you know, you just really root for them. But then you go to Donner, which I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really care for him. I just kind of feel like I don't know, he was just kind of character, kind of male. But on the aspect of what is right and what is wrong at an extent, it's kind of cool. I don't know if I really say I root for him as much, just to the point of like, this is really cool being able to see like the FBI side of it and kind of see both sides on the run and trying to catch a killer, are the aspects that I really liked of it. And like I said, it just kept it very fast paced. All the characters, though, I felt like were interesting enough. I feel like certain topics he dived into a little bit more, just to create that kind of character development that I enjoyed without going too far to making it boring. I feel like I wasn't really bored with this at all, and anytime it kind of started to get that way, it was like, bam, we're at another point of view. And in between some of these point of views, from the FBI and like the search to on the run, we had like these letters or emails, and even some interviews, so we kind of have a little bit of like that mixed media concept again, and it just overall made it very entertaining. This one I felt like was a little bit more intense for me and a little bit more like nerve-wracking. The suspense and like the thrillery of this was like really there for me, more with this one than Sleep Tight, and I think it's because I connected so much better with the characters in this one than in that book. But I'm landing at a 4. Now, it is a high 4, almost a 5, but it is still a 4. I feel like there was some parts of the plot that could have been a little bit stronger for me, but in the end, for a thriller horror, I'm pleasantly really surprised with this one, and definitely would read more from Stuart Neville. He's on my radar. I want to see what else is out there.
Summer days, don't miss your taste. Out in the crawl space, wanna break, still see your face. I just don't wanna be a missing case, walking in place.
Also finished. It's so hard to see in this lighting, but Diavola, I think is how you pronounce this. I'm not going to keep saying it because I feel like I'll go back and forth from like Diavola or whatever, but I think it's Diavola. Diavola. And looking it up, I think it translates to devil. And this is by Jennifer Thorne. I have never read anything by Jennifer Thorne, but this one I wanted to read because it was one of the booktube picks, and I just never got around to it. But the cover is so freaking eerie and cool. I love it. But this is about a very intense family. It's very toxic, very dysfunctional. And they all get together for their holiday, and this year they're getting together at this villa, and it's like the mom and dad, they have like their daughter, I think her name was Nicole, who is like the favorite, and then they have Benny and Anna, who are twins. Benny brings his boyfriend Christopher, who is so annoying, and then we kind of see where, like, I think there might have been more too. It's a little fuzzy. But they are at this villa. It's like vacation, and they're in Italy, and she's the only one who speaks Italian, and she has to keep saying it and letting like her family know, like, I can translate for you guys and stuff. But they very much have kind of picked her to kind of be the bearer of everything that goes wrong with their trips or their family. Like, Benny could do something and they'll be like, oh, that was because Anna did this. If their day goes wrong, they're like, oh, you know, I'm sure this was Anna. Anna had something to do with this. Our vacation's ruined. Oh, it's Anna's fault. She's kind of just like the one that gets the brunt of everything. And even in the beginning, I feel like I feel like I've been saying this a lot lately with my book reviews, but I feel like this is the type of ordeal where she should have just like not showed up. Like, I just would have not showed up. But at the same time, it's super relatable if you have a dysfunctional family like me. It's very relatable. But I liked the slow burn eeriness of this kind of creeping in. It's like a haunted house type of villa. So let me look at the synopsis for you guys, because I don't really want to spoil anything or give it too much away. But it says it isn't easy when she's the only one in the family who doesn't quite seem to fit in. So she's like the black sheep. Her twin brother Benny goes with the flow so much he's practically dissolved, and her older sister Nicole is so used to everyone, including her blandly docile husband and 2 kids. Yeah, so she has her husband and then 2 kids who start doing creepy things throughout this too. So you kind of have like that creepy kid element. It's almost like a possession though. Like, they're slowly, like the kids are slowly doing weird things. Then there's like weird like noises and voices in this villa, and Anna's trying to make sense of all of it, and it almost turns out to be kind of like a haunting thing that like follows you or comes with you and like not really possesses you, but like at the same time is like making you go insane. And it has a little bit of like a satire element to it, I feel like, throughout. It's kind of silly at times. I think that it has very creepy moments. I think it set out to be a really cool, creepy book in general. I love a haunted house moment, but like, take it on vacation, sure. But so many elements fell flat for me. I really did not like Anna. I had a really hard time liking anybody in this book. I think my star ratings really come down to the eeriness, the creepy moments, and the slow burn throughout the book on this just creepy villa and what is haunting it, like what is the background story. But there were so many elements to me that I felt like were just not answered, and I hated the way that this wrapped up. Like, it just did not make sense to me. I felt like it was going in a great direction, but like the very, very end just kind of took it out for me. And obviously I can't really talk about it too much, but I did land at either a high 3 or a 4. I'm somewhere in between there. I feel like, do I give this a 4? Because I loved so much of the horror bits, the creepy elements that I love in haunted house books and stories were in this. So I loved that. But I almost feel like it's maybe just a high 3 because of the elements I didn't like and the ending. Oof. I guess you guys will know before me what I rated this. First House by Sandeen was definitely also an unexpected one for me. I did not get along with this one. I really felt for our main character, Gemma. In the fall of 1962, she is 27 years old. Gemma Barker is desperate to escape her life in Chicago and the spirits she has always been able to see. She receives an unexpected job offer from the Duchamp family in New Orleans. She accepts, thinking it is her chance to start over. But Gemma discovers that the Duchamp family isn't what it seems. Light enough to pass as white, the black family members look down on brown-skinned Gemma. Their hold on reality extends to all the members of their eccentric clan, from haughty grandmother Honorine to beautiful yet inscrutable cousin Fawcett. Then the shocking truth comes out. Gemma learns the Duchamps are cursed, and they believe only she can free them. As Gemma wrestles with the gift she's run from all of her life, she unravels deeper and more disturbing secrets about the Duchamps. Secrets that stretch back over a century, secrets that bind her to their fate if she fails. While this is taking place in the 60s, I really wish we had more of that vibe going on. I feel like the only thing that we had was they didn't have new technology. So it was like they had access to books. But besides that, I feel like in most chapters, you couldn't tell the difference from anything. I felt like I wish that there was more of that decade or era kind of like going on. The one cool concept of it, though, I will say, is the whole curse of this family being in this house. It's like their wardrobe hasn't changed, and that was cool. But again, it didn't really feel like the 60s, so I wish there was a little bit more there. Although I liked Gemma, I wish that some of her actions and some of the choices she made were a little bit different. I also felt really confused. Like, I felt like this might just be a me problem, but I felt like her backstory wasn't fleshed out enough in the beginning to where it would make sense wrapping up in the end, because certain reveals would happen and I'd be like, how does that make sense? And then it's like, then she would like go into detail and explain why it makes sense. And I don't really care for that. I kind of want that to be fleshed out already, so that when the reveal happens, I'm like, oh, wow, you know, like, that makes sense, or oh my gosh, yes, that's what happened. And I wish that there was more of that. Besides that, I love paranormal books about, especially about women who can see ghost sightings, and even like the more like satire ones, think kind of like the September House, where like she can see the ghost, but they don't like harm her. She just kind of like just lives with them and accepts the fact that they're around. You get the same vibe with Gemma in this book, and I really liked that. Although she kind of like shies away from it, and her mom always taught her to close her eyes and count down and then open them, and then the ghost like would be gone. But it's still kind of giving that type of vibe where anywhere she goes, she can see a spirit or a ghost, and I thought that that was really cool. Now, getting into this family, I love that it touches on racism, and even racism within families that show a distaste in darker-skinned people who are even the same race as them, but just showing the racism within that because they are lighter skinned. The concepts and what this author came across with all of that, I felt like was really good. I felt like she did a really good job with that. I rather enjoyed it, and I felt like it was very meaningful and very touching, and I just felt so bad for Gemma, and my heart just broke for her over and over again with the comments. But I think more than anything, I was just so infuriated by this family throughout that I just kept thinking, Gemma, just leave. like this really could have just been, you show up for the job, they treat you awful, and then you leave, book, the end. That's what I would have liked, because I didn't like where the plot went. I didn't really care for much of the reveals or anything and how that was set up, and it just fell more flat with me, and I hate that. There was so many concepts that built up to the reveal and the ending and the curse and all of that I absolutely loved, and I thought it was so cool. I love like ancestry things and curses within families and things like that I was like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be a book for me, but I just don't really care for how it was executed and what it happened to be and everything that came out with it. It was just not my tropes that I like or the things that I enjoy reading. So I did land at a 3. I'm giving it a 3 because I do like the topics that were mentioned in this. I also liked so many aspects when it comes to the paranormal, ghost seeings, the setup of a family curse, all the things that I just mentioned is why I landed at a 3. But I do think it could have been a 4 if it was just a bit stronger. But I would definitely pick up more from Sandeen and see what she comes out with next because this is her debut. And I do feel like it is a good debut. I just hope her next ones are even stronger and a lot more fleshed out than this one is. But it is a stunning cover and I do own it because it was my aardvark pick. So I love that. It's a super beautiful book. I just wish I loved it more, enjoyed the reading more than I did.
Macmillan Audio presents What Feasts at Night, written by T. Kingfisher.
I am back and I have finished What Feast at Night by T. Kingfisher. This was a very quick read. It read super, super fast. And although I feel like I can't really say too much besides the fact that we are following the same soldier, Alex Easton, who we know from the previous book, What Moves the Dead. You're a soldier that just went through something very traumatic, very terrifying at the Usher Manor, which you would know about in the first book. So it's really hard to navigate this one. It does feel like a standalone novel besides, I feel like the first couple of chapters where it's really doing this like introduction to reintroduce you to Alex and tell their story about what happened. So you will be spoiled for What Moves the Dead if you jump straight into this one. It is a continuation, it is a sequel, so you do need to read that one first. They're both rather short, easy to get through, and both super enjoyable. The gothic vibes are there. The storytelling is just so eerie, dreary, very creepy, and both of these books has literally just made me cringe at certain points of whether it's explaining some type of fungi or explaining the way a body looks, like with body horror. T. Kingfisher just really knows how to creep me out with those elements, and I love it every single time. And I've been seeing that this one's getting more of an average rating versus What Moves the Dead that got a higher one. And I do think I also enjoyed that one a little bit more with it being a retelling of The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe, because I loved the take on that one and the way that she made the story really flow and incorporated different nature elements with fungi and stuff like that into the story. I just absolutely loved. I've read it twice now and will probably reread it again at some point. It is definitely a favorite of mine, and I can't say I enjoy this one just about as much. I felt like it was super entertaining. We're honestly just following Alex once again on their journey. They are now going to, what was it, a cabin? Their family hunting lodge deep in the cold, damp forest of their home country, Galatia. There is a lot of, I say a lot, it's a short story, so, but there is some talk of Galatia, which was really cool. Different knowledge within the story that was really cool. But there are, of course, going to be strange, eerie things that are going to happen. And then we get a familiar face from the first book. I believe her name was Miss Potter, who is a mycologist. And so she researches like mushrooms and fungi, and those aspects of the story that being brought into this one was really cool as well. And I overall really liked the way it went. I liked the way it wrapped up. Some people didn't really like the last couple of chapters. I thought it was rather cool. I thought it was interesting and something different. And instead of a book that could have went kind of the same way as the first, I felt like it made it a little bit more original within the series. So I liked it, but I think I am landing at 4 stars versus 5 stars of what I gave What Moves the Dead, because I do like that one more, but this one was still super entertaining.
You can have my friends. I don't miss seeing them, miss you when my phone's issues that you bought me from a nosebleed. I don't think
And for the last book of this video, I'm going to be trying to go down memory lane because I read this book months ago and I actually filmed it and that video got discarded. I never followed through with it. So I'm trying to rack my brain with all of these end of the year reads and try to remember this book. But it is definitely one that has slipped my mind a little bit, although I did have a book club meeting with a group of friends and we all discussed it, but this book has definitely slipped my mind. This is My Darling Dreadful Thing by Johanna van Veen. This is a debut, so I did say that I was really excited that their book made it. I think there's a lot of potential with this author as well, so I would definitely read future books from them, but this one just fell flat in some areas for me. I really enjoyed the gothic atmosphere, and I feel like the characters, to an extent, they're definitely the characters that you kind of keep at arm's length because they are kind of weird and different. This is in a world where dead can wake and walk among us, what is truly real. Ruth Beckman has a spirit companion only she can see. Ruth, strange, corpse-like, and dead for centuries, is the only good thing in Ruth's life, which is filled with sordid backroom seances organized by her mother. That is, until wealthy young widow Agnes Knoop attends one of these seances and asks Ruth to come live with her in her crumbling estate she inherited upon the death of her husband. The manner is unsettling, but the attraction between Ruth and Agnes is palpable. So how does someone end up dead? Ruth is caught red-handed, but she claims a spirit is the culprit. Dr. Montague, a psychologist tasked with finding out whether Ruth can be considered mentally fit to stand trial, suspects she's created an elaborate fantasy to protect her from what really happened. But Ruth knows spirits are real. She's loved one of them. She'll have to prove her innocence and her sanity or lose everything. And again, you have the gothic atmosphere, you have this kind of like semi-romance and this horror instance where it's kind of like almost like forbidden. And I remember so many creepy elements and moments in this book that I just loved, but the direction it went and how it wrapped up was just super unsatisfying for me. Again, I think the concepts with these characters was really cool. Her being able to have this like ghost companion who is always there with her and living at this manor. It almost kind of felt like the Fall of the House of Usher type of ordeal where like it's almost like this insanity moment with her and feeling like it's an unreliable source, getting her point of view, navigating while living in this just creepy place. I mean, they have like this mausoleum in the backyard with, you know, bodies and statues and tons of creepy stuff going on there, and so many amazing, creepy, eerie moments and unsettling descriptions that I can only hope for some amazing books in the future from this author. And really wish I liked this one more than I did, but I did land at a 3. I liked it, I didn't love it. With that being said, I am wrapping up this video and we'll be back for the second half, the next 10 books and their reviews and my ratings, ranking, and all of that, so stay tuned for that. You'll have to let me know in the comments which of these books you've read, maybe which ones you voted for in the Goodreads Choice Awards for 2024, and I will see you guys in my next video to let you know what I think.
I'll take all your issues, you can have my friends. I don't